Hi, M-Compass Media are outside the GPO in Dublin City. It's just around 1 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, and there's a demonstration against the war, for peace, and to galvanise the campaign to maintain Irish neutrality.
We started about 8-9 months ago with a group of anti-war activists deeply concerned with the dehumanising impacts of this ongoing conflict in Ukraine. We come from the position that war is dehumanising and never serves the interests of ordinary working class people. Whether they live in Ireland, whether they live in Ukraine, whether they live in Russia, war never serves the interests of anybody across the world. It only serves ruling elites, it serves warmongers, it serves people pushing the interests of the agenda of the ruling elite in society and not in the interests of ordinary working class people. The impacts of this devastating war are being felt most harshly in the conflict zone, with horrendous loss of life, displacement and unimaginable disruption caused to people's lives. Here in Ireland and across Europe, ordinary people and small businesses are feeling the devastating impacts of EU-imposed sanctions, with spiralling energy bills, food bills and inflation. Sanctions are nothing but a crude economic weapon that only worsen the lives and living standards of working class people. Therefore, we demand that the sanctions be ended.
I'm involved in two groups on this issue. And what's quite apparent to me is that while Ireland has a small but dedicated number of activists in promoting peace and neutrality, we have quite a lot of groups. And I think we should do what we can to work together with our limited resources to build a proper grassroots movement, to put real pressure on the establishment, and today is very encouraging in that regard. Let's be honest, Irish neutrality is in a very bad place. Last year we had 5 NATO warships visit Ireland, which stopped in Cork in blatant breaches of neutrality. Armed vessels from Canada, Holland, France, Belgium and a British warship, all armed to varying degrees, opposed by a small number of activists. The tireless and enduring activism of PAN and Shannon Watch in highlighting US military activities as Shannon for much of the last 20 years have exposed the collaboration of successions of Irish government with the US imperial war machine, which has visited death and destruction on the Middle East and millions of deaths. And now we see the Irish government provide overt military assistance in the support of the Ukraine army. We ask, why does the Irish government feel like making a military intervention in this conflict, yet sits on the sidelines often in silence, when the question of other conflicts as in Yemen and Palestine are raised? The answer is that successive Irish governments are complicit in war. This is not representative of the wishes of the Irish people. Neutrality remains consistently the will of the people, as regularly seen in media polls. For example, a poll recently in the Irish Times records 54% in opposition to provide military assistance to Ukrainian forces, with only 32% in favour. Sadly, the will of the Irish people is not foremost in the thoughts of this 26 county government on this or many other issues. Therefore, a referendum should be called for the Irish people to reassert Irish neutrality.
The Neutrality Alliance focus on only one thing in this war, and that's to get the truth out, because censorship has never been as bad since the Cold War ended. And I'm old enough to remember when there was raids under the bed and card-carrying communists, and you weren't allowed to open your mouth if you had a left-wing view, and you were isolated and you were sacked from your job and all of those things. And that is the position we're back into now. Russia today is banned in Ireland. RTE only give out one-sided narrative to this war. We have to put the emphasis on what is going on the ground. The Ukraine is a fascist state, and the forces against fascism are fighting the forces of NATO in the Ukraine. Fidel Castro said in the 1980s that the next land war in Europe would be between Russia and fascism. But fascism would have a new name. It would be called democracy. And that is precisely what's happening now.
I just want to re-emphasise some of the points that Bill and other speakers have brought up there. Our government narrative is absolutely sickening. We're just parroting basically the narrative that the likes of Stoltenberg, von der Leyen and their stooges in the US as well, that they've moulded a narrative for us And it's a false narrative. Most people in Ireland won't know the geopolitical history here. They won't know the origins of this conflict. And I could go on and put blames back and forward here, but I'm not going to get into that today. What I'm truly concerned about is Russians and Russian speakers in this country being afraid to come to rallies like this because they've got fear of the likes of what just went by there a minute ago, heckling them and making threats. In the summer of 2022, I worked close by to here and I witnessed an influx of big grown military age men displaying their swastikas, their bandera tattoos, black suns, and we're supposed to have such an anti-fascist population here. What the hell is going on, guys?
Obviously remember as well, over 14,000 people have been killed since 2014 in those People's Republic that the Irish government as well has been completely silent on. So you can't have it both ways, Micheál Martin. Stand up for Irish neutrality and stand up for diplomacy and peace.
We've built a small Stop the War campaign in Belfast. It's very hard work. And what we want to see that would help us a great deal is an all-Ireland movement to build the fight against the war. That's what we want to see.
I'm just an activist that's anti-war, and that's all wars. That's all wars. All wars. So I'm here today in solidarity with people who are against all wars. It's that simple. I'm Irish. I've been around the world. I've met some great people. I'm an artist facilitator. Artists see peace and they act through peace. John Lennon, Bob Marley, they inspire me greatly. Nina Simone. America inspires me greatly. But the ones that pro-war don't inspire me at all. George Bush, Dick Cheney, Joe Biden, the Clintons. They're masters of war, okay? So 20 years ago, this week, 600 cities marched against the invasion of Iraq because everyone knew what it was. It was American imperialist greed for oil, okay? 20 years later, it's exactly the same thing in the Baltics. It's exactly the same thing, except it's not oil, it's gas.
I think the last man showed that we are all angry as hell. We're angry that they will not push for peace talks. They will not push for a ceasefire. They want to continue the destruction, the mayhem, the killing and the slaughter. And that is on the watch of the EU, the United States, the Biden administration, NATO, but above all, we're talking about our own government. They are pushing in the EU constantly and supporting the drive to war.
I'd like to bring everything right down to balance and to the ground again. Our media, our politicians are treating this war like it's a football league. That's what they're doing. And when we are talking about hundreds of thousands of dead people, we're not talking about people dying of old age in a nursing home surrounded by their families. I read an article recently written by a young man that was in the trenches. And he had a friend that he developed over the last 6 months in the trenches. He slept in the foxholes with him to stay warm. And one day they were talking and messing in the trench, and he turned away for a minute and there was an explosion. And when he turned around again, his friend was standing on 2 stumps that used to be his legs. His jaw was hanging off and his scalp was ripped off, and the poor boy was trying to say something. What was he saying? Was he calling for his mother? Was he asking, is he okay? That's 200,000 plus dead. Every one of them were pulverised. There's no glory in war. There's no victory in war from any side. And you know why they're dying? They're dying. They're dying so that the United States can have global energy dominance. Won't you be happy when your son and daughter's conscripted in 5 or 10 years' time if this government gets its way? Won't you be happy to send them off for a few dollars for the Biden family? Won't you? We have one choice and one choice only here, and that's to rise up, to say no. We stood outside the British Embassy 3 weeks ago and there was a score of us.
Look at you now. In 2 or 3 weeks, where will we be in 2 or 3 months if we keep this up? Don't send your children and your grandchildren away to American gas and oil. Don't start hating whole nations for American gas and oil. Come back here when you're cold, bring more with you, and let's stop this war!
I just want to make 2 remarks. First, Christmas 1914. There was peace among both sides when they played cards and they played soccer match, all together in the interest of peace. This year, during Christmas week, what happened? Zelensky goes out to America, and Biden has plenty of time when we're all busy around Christmas. He has time to send billions of dollars over to Ukraine. The second point I want to make. This year, only a few weeks ago, on the 6th of February, one of the greatest disasters of present time occurred in Syria and in Turkey. 2 days later, on the 8th of February, Zelensky goes to London to meet Sunak and the King to get more weapons, and then goes on to Europe to continue. Did he think of going to his neighbouring country to offer them a little hand while there were people dying underneath buildings, looking for trying to get a breath of fresh air? And at the meantime, he was looking for war weapons to try and kill people. We want peace. Peace is what we're here for. So I think we must say peace, and that's all we want. Thank you all very much.
This is the end of the demonstration in Dublin against war and for Irish neutrality. If you have a look at the crowd around here behind us, this was not a small demonstration by any means compared to other demonstrations that have happened. It seems that there is an anti-war movement starting to build in Ireland, and it's starting to build without the political parties, it's starting to build without the unions, and it's starting to build without the mainstream media. Thanks for watching today, folks. Like, share this video, subscribe to M Compass Media. We'll be the ones that will keep you informed on this anti-war movement when all the other media doesn't. Thanks for tuning in, and share this out, folks.